Terry, goodbye, Uncle Tom. I think I've said enough. Look up those names. I'll say them one more time. Oh, I got to answer the sister's question. I'm going to get right to you, sis, if you're still there. Dr. Samuel Morton, he collected skulls. And he said we were, because of our skull structure, said we were less intelligent. After him, and there's many others, I'm just giving you the main ones. Dr. Joshua Knox, in the 1840s, came out with a book called Types of Mankind. And he said we were less intelligent because of our skull and because of ligaments in our legs. He said because the ligaments were longer in our legs, he said that meant we were submissive knee benders. That was Dr. Joshua Knott in the 1840s. And he came out with the book Types of Mankind. And he was a student of Dr. Samuel Morton, who used to study skulls. And he had a book called Types of Skulls. And he said blacks, because of our skull structure, we were less intelligent. After him in the 1850s, Dr. Samuel Cartwright came out with a book called The Physical Peculiarities of the Negro Race, and he came out and made up a mental illness called drapetomania. It's still in the DSM. The DSM is a diagnostic manual of all mental illnesses. They're on DSM-5 now. Bipolar, ADHD, eating disorders, schizophrenia, any mental illness you can think of is in the DSM. All counselors and therapists have a DSM. And a parent should have it, because if they try to say your child has ADHD or something, they're going to go right to that book. They're not going to go to Psalms. They're not going to go to a surah in the Quran. They're going to go to the DSM and say, yeah, your child has this. Or if you go see a counselor or a therapist or a psychiatrist and you say you're having some mental issues, they're not going to go tell you to read no Bible verse. They're going to go right to that DSM. So this drapetomania that this Dr. Samuel Cartwright made up, and he said blacks had the propensity to break their master's property and run from their slave master. He said you was mentally ill, and he called it drapetomania. This is Dr. Samuel Cartwright, the same one that was in the documentary that I just told you about called Goodbye, Uncle Tom, a documentary that came out before Roots in the 1970s, and they hid it from us. Goodbye, Uncle Tom talked about the sexual molestation and the forced incest on the slave plantation. It actually shows it, and he's in that movie, spreading his false narrative and his lies about us having drapetomania. Okay? Moving forward, the mental asylums in Virginia. In Virginia, the Central State Mental Asylum for the Colored Insane. In 1848, when the state of Virginia raised $10,000 to open it, the first mental asylum opened for colored people. The patients were the employees there. They had the patients tilling the field, cooking, building air conditioners, anything they needed. That's how they amassed so much wealth. And then other mental asylums did the same thing. What is known as Cherry Hospital. I'm just doing a quick review for those just tuning in. Cherry Hospital in Goldsboro, North Carolina, not too far where I just moved from. It used to be called the Eastern Asylum for the Colored Insane. They brought in a patient in 1925 named Junius Wilson, a 17-year-old black man who they falsely accused of rape, and they castrated this brother. In 1925 for a rape he didn't commit. In 1973, after their findings, they found he didn't commit the rape that they accused him of in 1925. They didn't release him. They just moved him to a less restrictive part of the mental asylum. The brother just died in 2001 at the age of like 95 or 96, meaning Junius Wilson. You can look his name up. Junis Wilson. His name is Junius Wilson. Jailed him in 1925, falsely accused him of a rape, and then they castrated him in 1925. Found that he didn't commit the rape, kept him in a mental asylum. He was deaf but not mentally ill. Castrated him. Can you imagine being castrated at 17 years old? What are you supposed to do, and how are you supposed to filter your sexual desires that God puts in you? And he just died in 2001. Look up Dr. James Watson. the 1978 Nobel Peace Prize winner, and the pioneer of DNA molecular structure. He said blacks are inferior, Africa is an inferior continent, because it's not a country, it's a continent, and he said blacks always fail tests and IQ tests, and they're inferior to whites. And I can name many, many more doctors, physicians, and others. I'm going to do a part 2 of this because it's more to it. Finishing out, do you know the father of ADHD? His name is Dr. Leon Eisenberg. He just died about 3-4 years ago. And on his deathbed, he admitted that he made ADHD up. And it's just a fictitious disease for financial gain. Look him up. His name is Dr. Leon Eisenberg. He is supposedly the father of ADHD. On his deathbed 3-4 years ago, he supposedly said that ADHD is a fictitious disease and he just came out with it for financial gain. I don't believe it's real myself. I work with children that are supposedly ADHD because I'm a therapist. I get children that are supposedly ADHD, bipolar. I'm working on my license now to work with children that are autistic. I mostly work with children with behavior problems. I don't believe it exists. And there's no such thing of a pill that can make you act right. And what is acting right? What is that? You don't got to agree with everything he says. My good friend and brother, Dr. Umar, he's the expert on that. I don't agree with everything he says, but when he drops the knowledge on that, because I have learned from him. I've sat with the man personally and been to his house. Talking about Dr. Umar. I believe what he says on that. Don't agree with everything he says, but on that topic, look up his lectures on that. But I work with children that are ADHD, so I'm not copying what he says. I know from experience, I don't believe it exists, and I certainly don't agree with putting 5, 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old boys and children on these strong psychotropic medications because they're not sitting still. Children that young ain't supposed to sit still. It would be something wrong with a boy or a girl, particularly boys, because of our testosterone levels, if they just sitting still and not moving. Do you know in Africa, a day of learning will be going out in nature, picking fresh fruit from trees and walking so we can sit still the next day and learn. It is not natural for African people to be sitting still in no desk, especially not listening to some demon that don't care nothing about us, sitting in a desk 8 hours listening to lies that Christopher Columbus discovered America and Thomas Jefferson and George Washington and Quincy Adams were good people, good Americans for the betterment of black people. That's not natural. No wonder they're not sitting still. And you're going to give them strong psychotropic, and what's the side effects of that? This is the Hour of Power with Brother Sharif. Look forward to part 2 of a history of how black people have been labeled mentally insane, crazy, and of unsound mind. This is Brother Sharif with the Hour of Power. Go to Hour of Power, Sharif Hamid, on YouTube. Subscribe and share the channel. So what? So we can continue to lift the mind, body, and soul of our people. Sister Naira asked what's my thoughts on vaccines? I can only repeat what one of my teachers said. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad told us to stay away from vaccines. Oh, here you go with that Muslim stuff. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad lifted and gave information to lift the mind, body, and soul of all black people. Yes, he was a Muslim, but opening businesses, pulling people off the streets that was prostituting, on drugs, not taking care of their family. It is no telling how many black people he has raised their consciousness. And then his students. Look who his students are. You can only judge judge a fruit by the tree that it comes from. How you gonna like the fruit but not like the tree or the root that it comes from? Where did Muhammad Ali come from? The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He gave him his name. How about Dr. Khalid Muhammad? How about Minister Farrakhan? How about Malcolm X? And many, many more. The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad told us to stay away from vaccines. He said to stay away from them. Most of the time it's all kind of poisons and stuff in the vaccine. The H1N1 vaccine, what happened to that? The Ebola virus. Do you know that back in the 50s, I already gave a talk on this. You got to go back on the channel. Back in the 50s, America, and I promise this will be my last one. I hope you're enjoying this and learning from it. Y'all all right? Someone raised their hand or send me something's telling me you're all right. And this will be my last point. Going off what Sister Naira asked me. Back in the 1950s, America was afflicted with polio. It is the last disease that America has cured. It was the last disease from that America has cured. You want to know how and how that's factual? Just look it up. What have they cured since polio? But guess what? What happened with polio was a doctor by the name of Jonas Salk came out with the vaccine. But he had it, but he didn't release it until his wife got polio. Talking about Dr. Jonas Salk, he was a German a doctor, okay? And he had the vaccine. He released the vaccine to America with almost overnight. All the money that was raised for treatment for polio dried up because no one needed the treatment because Dr. Jonas Salk came out with the vaccine that cured it. So no one needed the treatment. The AMA, which is the American Medical Association, supposedly had a meeting and said, from this point forward, we will cure no more diseases because it's not profitable. And we certainly won't have a vaccine that's going to cure any disease. Since then, where all these cancers come from, brain cancer and all these tumors. You know how many of our people in the general American public is suffering from cancer? What are these vaccines doing? Is there any proof that it's making us any healthier? If anything, it's probably making us sicker. I'm going to say that again. Polio is the last disease that America has cured. In the AMA, if you go in Kevin Trudeau's book, which he came out with a very controversial book, a white man, called The Natural Cures They Don't Want You to Know About. He said the AMA had this meeting and said, we will cure no more diseases from this point forward because it's not profitable. Well, I don't believe that. Okay, well, answer this question then. What disease has America cured since polio? That was in the 1950s. They haven't cured not one single disease, and I don't see what the vaccines is doing for the general health of American people. It's not making us any healthier. If anything, it's probably making us sicker. But I'm not a healthcare professional or expert. My profession is counseling and therapy. So I hope that answered your question, Sister Naira. This is Brother Sharif once again with the Hour of Power. My sister said, upsets me. I'm listening. Almost lost my daughter at 5 years old. Well, we're going to lift her up in prayer. Your daughter is going to be okay. My niece is going to be okay. We're going to lift her up in prayer, and we're going to continue to pray for each other for our health. If we don't have good health, we don't have anything. If you don't have good health, you could have $10 million. How are you going to enjoy it? Right? So we're going to lift her up in prayer. We're going to pray for each other, but we have to do practical things to be healthy. You can't be going to McDonald's and Wendy's and Chick-fil-A and eating a bunch of junk food and think you're going to be healthy. You can pray all you want. Try doing those two things together, praying and not doing practical things, and see how that works. The book says you have to do works as well as pray. I believe it says something like that. So we're going to pray, but we're going to do the work too to keep ourselves healthy. Our health is all we got. For the 50th time, this is Brother Sharif with the Hour of Power. Go to Hour of Power, Sharif Hamid on YouTube. Look for part 2 of a history of how black people got labeled with mental illness and being mentally insane. That's right, sis. Faith without work is dead. Yes. To my Muslim family, assalamu alaikum. To my Christian family, praise the Lord. To my Hebrew Israelite family, shalom. To my black conscious family, hotep. And to my people in the streets, what's good to you? This is Brother Sharif with the Hour of Power. Please share this message with like minds and look for part 2 in the next